The morning moved slowly along the flooded edge of the forest, where water had slipped beyond its usual borders and settled into the roots of trees and the hollows of fallen leaves. Mist hovered low, thin and pale, drifting between trunks like something uncertain of where to rest. Rangers walked in a loose line along the softened ground, their boots sinking quietly into dark mud, each step measured and deliberate. They had been tracking signs of recent movement, broken reeds, faint paw impressions pressed into wet soil, small disturbances that suggested something young had passed through here during the night. Nothing felt urgent yet. The forest, despite its swelling waters, still held its usual rhythm of distant birds and shifting branches. Then one of them slowed. Not suddenly, not sharply, but with the subtle hesitation of someone noticing something that did not belong. Near the boundary where forest met floodplain, a small shape lay half-curled beside a cluster of exposed roots. At first it seemed like driftwood, pale and still. Only when they drew closer did its outline resolve into fur, matted and darkened by moisture. A tiger cub, barely large enough to stand firmly on its own, rested on its side, unmoving. The water had crept close. Thin streams slipped around the roots, collecting in shallow pools inches from the cub's body. Its flank rose and fell so faintly it was easy to miss, a shallow rhythm that seemed more like a tremor than breathing. One ear twitched once, slowly as if responding to something far away. Its paws were tucked loosely beneath its chest, claws retracted, muscles slack with exhaustion. Mud streaked its striped coat, dulling the brightness of its markings. A thin layer of leaves clung to its back. The rangers stopped several steps away. No one reached for it. No one raised a voice. They knelt carefully, keeping their bodies low, watching for signs that the mother might be nearby. In forests like this, separation was rarely simple. Floods scattered scents, erased trails, forced animals into unfamiliar paths. A cub could be carried by water, pushed by panic, or simply wandered too far while its mother searched for higher ground. One ranger leaned forward slightly, studying the rise of the small ribcage. "It's still breathing," he murmured, barely louder than the rustle of leaves. Another answered just as quietly, "So weak." The cub's eyes fluttered once, opening to thin slits before closing again. Its whiskers quivered, catching faint vibrations from footsteps and distant calls. A soft, dry sound escaped its throat, not a cry, not a call, but something closer to breath slipping through tired lungs. Its tail shifted a few centimeters, then fell still. Around them, the water continued its slow advance, spreading in thin sheets over flattened grass. The forest did not pause. Insects skimmed the surface. A distant bird called from higher ground. Somewhere far beyond sight, another tiger might have been moving, searching, unaware of how close and yet how unreachable her cub had become. The rangers exchanged glances, each understanding the weight of the moment without needing words. Intervening could save a life. Waiting might reunite a family. Both carried risks. They remained where they were, watching, listening, letting time reveal what it could. The cub lay between them and the rising water, small and fragile, its breath threading quietly through the damp air as morning light filtered down through trembling leaves. Time passed in slow, uneven fragments, measured by drifting leaves and the subtle shift of water around exposed roots. The other rangers remained where they were, their presence held back, contained, as one of them eased forward alone. He moved with careful patience, stepping into the shallow flood, letting each foot settle before transferring his weight. The water rippled outward in soft circles, touching reeds and fallen branches before dissolving again. His trousers darkened as the water climbed higher, but he did not adjust his pace. Everything about his movement was quiet, intentional, meant to carry no threat. The cub lay where it had been, its breathing still shallow, its body pressed into damp earth. As the ranger drew closer, the cub's ears flattened slightly against its head. One eye opened partway, clouded with fatigue and confusion. The pupil widened, registering motion, sound, unfamiliar scent. A faint vibration passed through its small frame, not quite a tremble, more like a ripple of tension moving beneath fur. The ranger stopped several steps away. He lowered himself slowly until he was crouched near the water's surface, his hands resting loosely on his knees. He did not reach out. He did not lean forward. He allowed the distance to remain, offering space as much as presence. "It's okay, little one," he whispered, his voice barely separating itself from the murmur of water. The cub responded with a weak lift of its head. The effort was visible in the tightening of its neck muscles, in the slight shake that followed. Its mouth opened just enough to release a low, breathy sound, somewhere between a hiss and a whimper, thin and uncertain. It tried to pull one foreleg beneath its body, but the limb slipped on wet leaves and fell back into place. Its body slumped again, sides fluttering as it worked to draw in air. Water brushed closer now, touching the edge of its hind paw. The cub reacted with a small jolt, toes curling reflexively. It shifted again, managing to drag itself a few centimeters higher onto a root, then stopped, exhausted by the effort. Its tail flicked once, then lay still. The ranger adjusted his position, angling his body slightly away, reducing the directness of his presence. He spoke again softly. "You're safe." The words were not meant to explain anything. They were simply offered, steady and low, a sound without pressure. The cub's gaze lingered on him. Its eyes did not brighten. There was no sudden calm. But the rigid tension in its shoulders eased by a small degree. Its breathing, though still shallow, found a steadier rhythm. Another faint sound slipped from its throat, quieter than before, more like air moving through narrow passageways than any attempt at a call. Behind them, the other rangers watched without moving. They could see the waterline creeping higher along the roots, narrowing the strip of dry ground. They could see the cub's strength thinning with each minute. Waiting no longer promised reunion. It promised loss. The ranger extended one hand slightly, palm open, stopping well short of contact. The cub flinched, then settled, its head lowering onto the root. Its eyes closed again, not in surrender, but in exhaustion. Between fear and collapse, it chose stillness. Around them, the floodwater continued its quiet advance, swirling with leaves and fragments of bark. The forest breathed on, indifferent and immense. In that narrow space between rising water and human hands, the cub lay suspended in fragile trust, its small body rising and falling as the ranger remained beside it, steady as the current slowly changed the shape of the shore. The moment unfolded without urgency and movement, though every decision carried quiet weight. The ranger did not rush. He waited for the cub's breathing to settle into its fragile rhythm, waited for the water's slow curl around the roots to make its meaning clear. Then, with a motion that unfolded over several careful seconds, he shifted closer, lowering himself until his knees touched the wet earth. His hands moved gradually, first resting near the cub's side, allowing scent and presence to settle before any contact was made. The cub stirred as his fingers brushed the damp fur along its shoulder. A weak ripple traveled through its body. Its head lifted a fraction, then dropped again. The sound it made was thin and dry, barely audible beneath the water's movement. Its mouth opened once as if testing the air, then closed. With steady coordination, another ranger eased forward from behind, bringing a folded cloth and a small thermal wrap. Together they worked in silence, lifting the cub just enough to slide support beneath its chest and hindquarters. The cub's weight was lighter than expected, its body yielding easily to their hands, muscles softened by fatigue. Its paws curled inward as it was raised, claws never extending, strength no longer available for resistance. They carried it only a short distance, toward a rise where fallen branches had collected into a natural shelter. Leaves and bark formed a loose canopy, shielding the ground beneath from wind and drifting water. The earth there was firmer, still damp, but no longer submerged. They settled the cub carefully into this narrow pocket of safety, positioning its body so that its head rested slightly elevated on a padded fold of fabric. The cub lay still for several seconds after being placed down. Its chest moved in shallow arcs, each breath seeming to require conscious effort. Its tongue slipped briefly between its lips, dry and pale, before retreating again. The skin along its flank pulled faintly against bone, a subtle sign of how little reserve remained. When one ranger gently touched the inside of its ear to assess warmth, it flinched weakly, then relaxed. A small container of water was open nearby. No attempt was made to pour. Instead, a damp cloth was pressed lightly against the cub's mouth, allowing moisture to collect along its lips. After a pause, the cub's tongue moved again, slow and tentative, brushing against the fabric. A few drops were drawn in almost accidentally. Its throat worked once, then again. "That's good," one ranger murmured, barely louder than breath. They adjusted the thermal wrap around the cub's body, not tightening, only guiding warmth inward. The cub's breathing softened by degrees, becoming less erratic, more measured. Its eyes opened briefly, reflecting dull light filtered through branches, then closed once more. Its ears twitched in response to distant forest sounds, reminders that life beyond this small shelter continued without pause. The branches above shifted slightly as wind passed through them. Leaves whispered against one another. Somewhere farther downslope, water slid over stone and root, reshaping the land inch by inch. Beneath the shelter, the cub lay wrapped in quiet care, its small body absorbing warmth and moisture, suspended between what it had lost and what it might still recover, while the team remained close, patient and unmoving, letting time do what force never could. The hours that followed settled into a fragile rhythm of watching and waiting. The cub remained beneath the shelter of branches, its small body wrapped in quiet layers of warmth, its breathing no longer ragged but still shallow. From time to time, a ranger adjusted the cloth at its side or moistened its lips again, always with the same restrained patience. No one spoke above a whisper. Even their movements seemed shaped by the stillness surrounding them. Light shifted gradually through the canopy, thinning and thickening as clouds passed overhead. Water continued to withdraw and return in small pulses, responding to distant currents. The forest resumed its muted conversations. Insects threading thin notes through the air, leaves brushing together, unseen animals moving cautiously along higher ground. Within this subdued chorus, the cub lay almost motionless, rising and falling in slow, uneven breaths. Then, faintly at first, a sound traveled through the trees. It was low and resonant, carrying across trunks and waterlogged hollows, slipping between branches like something searching. It did not belong to birds or wind. It rose again moments later, fuller this time, layered with urgency and restraint. One of the rangers lifted his head slightly. Another stilled his hands. The cub reacted before any of them spoke. Its ears twitched sharply. Its head lifted with visible effort, neck muscles tightening as it turned toward the direction of the sound. A thin response escaped its throat, fragile and incomplete, more breath than voice but shaped by instinct. The sound faded quickly, leaving the cub trembling faintly against the cloth. The call came again, closer now. From within the dense tangle of trees beyond the shelter, movement shifted. Branches bent subtly. Leaves parted. A striped form emerged in fragments at first, shoulder, flank, tail, each revealed and concealed again by shadow. The mother tiger stepped forward with measured precision, placing each paw on firm ground, avoiding loose debris and shallow water. Her body remained low, muscles coiled but controlled, every motion deliberate. She stopped at the edge of the clearing, half hidden behind a fallen trunk. Her gaze fixed immediately on the shelter beneath the branches. Her ears angled forward, then outward, reading every sound, every scent. The air carried traces of human presence, unfamiliar and unsettling, and she did not ignore them. The rangers remained where they were. No one stood. No one reached. No one spoke. One slowly shifted backward, inch by inch, reducing his outline. Another lowered his eyes, keeping his posture open and still. The space between human and animal widened without anyone consciously measuring it. The cub lifted its head again, responding to the presence it recognized more than understood. Its mouth opened, releasing another faint call, weaker than before but unmistakably directed. Its tail stirred once against the cloth. The mother answered softly, a low sound resonating in her chest rather than projecting outward. She stepped closer, stopping again when a twig snapped beneath her weight. Her nostrils flared. Her eyes never left the shelter. For several long moments nothing changed. Water dripped from leaves. A bird called distantly. Wind slid through tall grass. Then gradually she advanced another step. The rangers retreated another half step in response, maintaining distance without retreating entirely. They watched as she approached the branches, her movements slow, cautious, layered with calculation shaped by survival. She lowered her head slightly, scenting the air near her cub. The cub shifted weakly, pressing its face toward her presence. Their breaths mingled, faint and warm beneath the shelter. The forest seemed to hold its breath with them, suspended between separation and reunion, as mother and cub stood on the edge of finding each other again in the quiet aftermath of flood and fear. Time lengthened around them, stretching into something almost unmeasurable. The forest shifted slowly from afternoon toward evening, light thinning as clouds drifted across the sky. Shadows softened, then deepened again. The mother remained near the shelter, never fully stepping forward, never retreating. She watched. She listened. She waited. Her body stayed poised in quiet readiness, weight balanced, muscles prepared for flight or defense if the moment demanded it. The cub lay beneath the branches, its energy nearly spent. Yet each time the mother shifted her position, its ears responded. Each time her breath stirred the leaves, its head lifted slightly. A fragile thread of recognition held them together across the narrow distance that still remained. The rangers did not interfere. They lowered themselves farther back, blending into trunks and brush, becoming part of the landscape rather than its disturbance. Their voices remained absent. Their hands stayed at their sides. Everything about their presence was reduced to the smallest possible shape. Gradually the mother moved closer. Her steps were slow enough to seem almost suspended between moments. She tested each surface before trusting it. She circled once, widening her angle of approach, gathering information through scent and sound. Then she advanced again until she stood at the edge of the shelter, close enough that her breath stirred the cloth resting against her cub. The cub responded with a weak sound, barely formed, more vibration than call. Its body shifted, pressing forward, gathering the last of its remaining strength. One paw reached outward, touching her foreleg lightly, uncertainly. She lowered her head. Her nose brushed the cub's face. She inhaled deeply, drawing in scent that confirmed what distance and shadow had only suggested. Her tongue extended once, slow and deliberate, smoothing damp fur along its cheek. The cub leaned into the contact, its breathing quickening for a moment before settling again. Another gentle lick followed. Then another. The cub's body, tense with fatigue and confusion, softened against her. Its head tucked instinctively beneath her jaw. Its small frame curved closer, finding the familiar rhythm of her presence. The tremble that had lingered through the day gradually eased. The mother shifted her stance, widening her legs slightly to create space. She nudged the cub with her muzzle, encouraging movement. It struggled at first, slipping on damp leaves, legs unsteady. She waited. Then she supported it with her body, guiding rather than forcing. After several attempts, the cub managed to stand. It swayed, corrected itself, and leaned into her flank. She remained still until its balance steadied. Then, with careful timing, she turned toward higher ground. They moved together slowly. Step by step, they crossed the softened earth, passing through thinning water and flattened grass. The cub paused often. Each time, the mother stopped with it, touching it lightly, grounding it before continuing. Their progress was unhurried, shaped entirely by the cub's limits. The rangers watched in silence as the pair reached the edge of the drying grasslands. Their taller blades swayed gently in the evening breeze, catching fading light along their tips. The mother led the cub into this moving field, their striped forms gradually dissolving into pattern and shadow. Soon only the grass remained. Wind passed through it in soft waves. Insects resumed their steady chorus. The forest returned to its quiet continuity. And in the space where fear and uncertainty had once gathered, there lingered only the memory of small breaths, patient hands, and a mother and her cub walking back into the wide, waiting world.